Cash in transit crimes continue to be on the rise in the country. Just yesterday, a cash in transit driver was shot dead during a heist in Soweto after armed robbers opened fire on the guards. In a separate incident, police have launched a manhunt for cash in transit heist suspects who attacked a cash van in Vanderbijl Park on Friday. For more on this story, I'm joined by anti-crime activist Yusuf Abramjee. Thank you so much for your time this evening, Yusuf. I must say that I've been seeing more and more tweets going about with these cash in transit heist attacks and bombings. Are we seeing an increase, and how serious is the situation?
Good evening, Heidi. Yes, indeed, we are seeing a renewed onslaught by these criminal gangs. They're becoming more violent. They're having more and more resources they are using. They are getting away with millions and millions of rands. And I think the situation that we've seen over the past few weeks especially is becoming more and more worrying. I've spoken to the cash in transit industry, and the companies themselves are expressing their concern. Now, the Cash in Transit Association of South Africa, they run the Joint Operations Center. They've just given me some figures this evening, Heidi, and between the 1st of January and today, there were at least 32 CIT robberies in South Africa, the majority of them in Gauteng. And the figures for last year, from January to December, showed that there were 314 incidents where cash vans were attacked on our highways and byways, including so-called cross-pavement robberies. And that is an increase of about 8% on the figures for the previous year. So most certainly we are seeing an onslaught. We are seeing that these criminals are using more firepower. They're using AK-47s, they're using R4 rifles, R5 rifles. They're coming with a lot of resources, 4 or 5 vehicles. They're using explosives to blow up these cash vans. So the violent trend that we are seeing is something that is of serious concern. And also, we had when I look at some of the incidents, there were at least 2 civilians that lost their lives in cash in transit robberies during December and January. And we know that just recently, 2 CIT security officers and also a police officer was killed in the incident that you referred to in Vanderbijl Park in the Free State. So it's becoming more and more violent, Heidi.
This is exactly what I wanted to ask you, Yusuf. It seems as though it's becoming extremely violent. Some of the footage that we were actually playing over this interview, it's also very public. I mean, they do this in the middle of nowhere while these cash and transit vans are driving, or if they are parked, for example, at a petrol station. And it just seems as though there's so much force, and there's even more people now that are trying to get this money out of these cash and transit vehicles. Bombings, as you mentioned, more guns are being used, more vehicles are being used. Tell us a little bit more about what we're seeing with the modus operandi that these people are now using.
Well, the MOU is in line with what we've seen over the past few years, but most certainly we are seeing, in my view, new gangs that are cropping up. These gangs could be so-called copycat gangs. They're coming with more resources, more people. Very often we saw 3 or 4, even 5 people being part of these gangs. Today we are seeing up to 25 to 30 people. It's almost like a full-scale war. It's an army of people that are carrying out these robberies, and they come heavily armed. I would say Gauteng is most certainly the hotspot. From the figures I looked at, Gauteng has the highest number of incidents. We know that SBB Security, they're one of the companies with more of the stringent security measures. They fought off successfully an attack in the Nuan in the Western Cape, outside Cape Town, just last week. And we know that the CIT companies, Heidi, have invested millions and millions of rands in technology, probably not enough. They've also invested in air support. They've got helicopters in the air. They have technical teams. But despite the increased security by the cash and transit companies, these criminals are becoming more and more violent. Now, you may ask me, what needs to be done? I think a lot of action still needs to be taken, not only by the police and by the security companies themselves, but members of the community who know that these people are involved in these crimes. Do your civic and your moral duty, blow the whistle on these criminals. And when I looked at the figures for the past 5 years, there's been an average of almost 300 attacks every year from 2017 to 2021. A total of 1,516 cash vans were attacked over a 5-year period. And if you look at the numbers, Heidi, it is something that is very, very worrying. Are the security companies doing enough? probably not. I know that one security company, G4S, particularly, has been very, very hard hit. Are they investing money into technology? For example, there's the so-called Pudu system, the polyurethane technology that's available. I don't think so, and I think a lot of work still needs to be done.
Certainly, Yusuf, I think it's a huge concern. And as you say, you know, the community must also alert when they are aware of perhaps community members being involved in all of this. But I still have a very important question. Where's our police? I mean, they should also be trying to assist, even if it's private companies. These bombings and these attacks on cash and transit vehicles are extremely violent. And I'm just speaking as a citizen now. When I see those cash and transit vehicles, I run away because I get so nervous and anxious as to what happens. I mean, they ram into people. It becomes so violent that you worry that you might be attacked as well.
Indeed, I'm happy that you run away from these cash vans, and that's my advice to members of the community who often go to a shopping center and they see these cash vans. Keep your distance. That's my first bit of advice. Secondly, we've seen a new trend where when these cash vans are attacked, the minute the explosives blow up the van, the robbers make off with the loot, there's still some cash left. And these members of the public, ordinary members of the public, surge forward and they go and grab the remaining cash. That is not only dangerous because the explosives may still be very dangerous left on the scene, but also it contaminates the crime scene. And that is why the police are having difficulty in trying to follow up, because most of the crime scenes these days seem to be contaminated by ordinary members of the public who are going for a few rand that's left behind. Where's the police? A great question. We know the police are hopelessly under-resourced. We know their investigation capabilities are at an all-time low. We know that the Hawks at one stage were looking at some of these gangs. Yes, some arrests have been made. The only problem is the criminal justice system grants these criminals very often, the people involved in these crimes, bail only to come out and commit more crime. We know that at the end of 2019, after the cash and transit industry earlier presented to the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee, there were special police teams set up just to focus on CIT robberies. For whatever reason, they were dismantled in 2019. In 2020, 2021, and now we've seen in the first month and a half or so, we're seeing a dramatic increase because these schemes no more exist. And that is why I think the call by the cash and transit industry, particularly by SBV Security, by G4S, by Fidelity, and some of the smaller companies, is for the police to really come now and make sure that they assist them by protecting these vans, is something which I think the police leadership and the police minister should urgently explore. The situation is out of control, Heidi.
Definitely out of control, and hopefully somebody, the powers that be, are listening to this, because it just cannot go on anymore. Thank you so much for your insights and giving us a picture of how dire the situation actually is. That was anti-crime activist Yusuf Abramjee.